Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be with all of you. I love this slide that reminds us what being together looked like from the last time we gathered in 2019. Can you find yourself in that crowd? We'll be there again, but for now, thank you for being willing to be with us virtually. Even though we cannot see each other, you can spread love in the chat to say hello and feel the energy of the people who are watching with you today. I would like to thank our sponsors who are the backbone of the event. They contribute to our success by stepping up to help us cover costs and create a base to build from today. I am pleased to say we went over our sponsorship goal. Thank you to our signature partner sponsors, Columbia Bank, and our board president, Cindy Grady. Our corporate partner sponsors are Beacon Development Group, Clara Kinnear Ladd, Tacoma Screw Products, Tacoma Community College, Multicare, and Green Wealth Management. And our corporate friend sponsors are Molina Healthcare, Propel Insurance, Banner Bank, Johnson Stone Pagano, Leanne and Kyle Williams, Phyllis Burgess PLLC, Phyllis Izant, Corsmo Construction, Pam Schuler, and SMR Architects. Many thanks to all of you. I also want to thank our virtual table hosts. Thank you for inviting your friends to join you today. And thank you as well to our board and staff who show up to do the hard work and do so with grace and humility. And a special shout out to Jesse Bolin and Jody Fortune from our Fund Development Department who helped make this event a success. This is my final event for the YWCA as I am retiring on July 9th. So I'm going to start by sharing a few remarks. It has been a blessing and at times a challenge to lead the YWCA Pierce County. What I find to be true of challenges is they provide an opportunity to learn and lead full circle back to being blessings. Here are a few examples. The most recent challenge has been COVID. We all share this challenge, and we have all been changed by this pandemic. It has been lonely, it has been scary, and figuring out how to continue programming through a stay-at-home mandate has been nothing short of exhausting. But my team pulled together and started the pivot dance. Once we moved programs to virtual platforms, here are some of the blessings. Before, if a client wanted to seek therapy, they came to our building and met with one of our therapists. That meant if they moved out of state or if transportation were a barrier, they would have to leave the program. Seeking out a new therapist means they would have to start sharing their story all over again, which can be re-traumatizing. But now they can continue services remotely and that barrier fades away. COVID took away face-to-face meetings and added an easier way for clients to access our services. A challenge became a blessing. We have completed 3 campaigns in the last 16 years, starting with a $5 million campaign to purchase an apartment building across the street and remodel it into our domestic violence shelter. We signed the closing documents to purchase the building as we welcomed in 2008. So who remembers what that challenge was? Yes, it was the recession. The board buoyed their courage and we moved forward even though it was not the best of times. What we learned is that generous people remain generous even in a recession. And because some projects put on the brakes and stopped, the grants that were focusing on building infrastructure became less competitive due to fewer projects being done. Of course, another challenge was the campaign started as a $4 million campaign, and the amount kept rising as we found new issues with the building, like old electrical wiring that had to be completely replaced. Another challenge was how to furnish the units now that everyone had their own apartment with a kitchen, bathroom, and one or more bedrooms. When the cost proved to be beyond our budget, a board member, Phyllis Izant, asked if we would meet with her designer. That meeting turned our challenge into a blessing when Patty Bruce met with us and explained how she had always wanted to work with a homeless shelter to make the spaces beautiful. As a result, 32 designers donated their time to create beautiful apartments. We learned that beauty makes a difference in how people heal. We learned that no one can heal from trauma without the safety of a locking door and their own space. And we learned that we could keep a pandemic out of the space because everyone could isolate in place. In fact, just by changing a few protocols, like instead of the food bank being accessible for anyone to enter, it is now one family at a time, and the same is true for our laundry room. And the changes also meant that incidents of the regular flu and other illnesses were kept at bay. A challenge became a blessing. In 2016, our shelter was featured in an exhibit at the Cooper Hewitt Design Smithsonian in New York City in an exhibit titled By the People, Designing a Better America, for the dignity it brings to our clients. And that was truly a blessing. Once we moved the clients into the new shelter in 2010, we immediately started an $800,000 campaign to remodel the 405 building, mostly to remodel the 2 floors where the shelter had been. The space was very worn out and needed a lot of love from our contractor, Corsmo Construction. With their help, we breathed new life into the building, expanding 1 floor for our therapeutic children's program and 1 for our legal program. The $800,000 campaign became a $1.2 million campaign, which we successfully completed and expanded our programs into the remodeled space in 2012. The challenges of remodeling while still conducting programs became a blessing when we moved into the greatly improved spaces. In the case of our children's program, one young client, when seeing the children's floor for the first time, exclaimed, "Mom, can we come here every day?" Now that the 2 projects were complete, it was time to catch our breath for a minute and then start planning our $20 million project that became a $23.2 million project, Home at Last. You will see a video in a few minutes on this project, so I'm not going to say a whole lot about it right now, but I would tell you that moving in families and individuals that have been homeless has put a face on homelessness that I have not experienced. Every person has a story, and hearing the stories has been a privilege. But what has been more heartwarming is seeing the joy in their eyes and their entire being as they express their gratitude for having a home. As Maya Angelou stated, the ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned. One of my favorite memories are the rallies that we have organized within 1 or 2 weeks planning time. Our first rally was the Selma Solidarity March over the 11th Street Bridge. This rally was picked up by the national press as one of 2 rallies that took place outside of Selma, Alabama for the 50th anniversary of the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Speakers included former Mayor Harold Moss and our current mayor, Victoria Woodards, among others. Next, we organized several rallies to lift up women during the Kavanaugh hearings. We organized 3 different rallies in different locations with local speakers that focused on believing women. Then we organized a rally at People's Park to keep families together when children were being taken away from their families and put in cages by the hundreds. In addition to local speakers from diverse communities, the rally also featured the refugee choir. And finally, last month, a rally to show solidarity with our AAPI community following the murders in Atlanta. Here you see Congresswoman Strickland, who was one of our many local speakers that day. In addition to the rallies and protests that we organized, the YWCA also has shown up at other rallies organized by Black Lives Matter, the Tacoma Action Collective, and others to demand justice for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many other innocent Black women and men who have been murdered by police, including locally, Manny Ellis. We also chartered 2 sold-out buses so community members could easily attend the Women's March in Olympia. We must continue to show up if we are ever going to see the change we desperately need in our country for equity and justice. I could go on and will hold this agency, the staff, the board, and the donors in my heart. I am a better person because I have worked here, and I will never stop my focus on working to make the world a better place for all people. I will end by reciting the sayings on the bracelets that I put on every morning. Each bracelet was purchased at the Rags Wearable Art Show over 6 different years. I recite the sayings every morning as I put them on my wrist as my mantras to greet the day. So here they are in the order that I purchased them. Number 1, she believed she could, so she did. This saying has got me through our capital campaigns and so much more. Number 2, let the beauty we love be what we do. This represents the 16 years I have worked here. Number 3, remember your strength. I bought this and less than 30 minutes later left the event and fell, breaking my ankle in 2 places that resulted in being in a cast or a boot for 6 months. I am a walker, and so this was a real challenge for me, and I truly needed this bracelet to remember my strength. Number 4, rise up and roar. I was raised to fight for justice. This bracelet is in tribute to my parents and grandparents, whose shoulders I stand on every time I hold a sign or speak my mind. Number 5, let peace begin with me. If I am not at peace, I cannot help create peace. And the one I just bought this year, leap and the net will appear. When I saw this one, I knew it was mine. I like to say I am not retiring, I am rewiring. I trust that what that looks like will be clear after I take a break and simply rest. I want to thank you so much for standing by my side, for caring about our work, and for lifting me up and helping me turn challenges into blessings. And now I am thrilled to introduce our first video today. This video looks into the housing project that we just completed.
The Home at Last project has been so important for our community and especially for our tenants, because it reminds everyone that everyone deserves a home. And not just any home, but a home that is safe, with a locking door, that provides dignity and the respect that everyone deserves. And that's what this project has accomplished. All the appliances and the cabinetry, everything is top of the line. Not the cheapest we could get, but the best we can get for the tenants who are going to be making it their home. And that is also what the donors have helped us provide. They've helped us provide beauty, because beauty makes a difference in how people heal. And everyone in this project who has been homeless has trauma. I can promise you everyone is a survivor, and they're healing. And so we want this space to support every aspect of that healing. It's really important to me that housing, places where people heal and survivors live, really focus on art. A lot of people think art is an extra. Maybe it's a frill. But to me, art makes a difference, once again, in how people heal. And it provides that safe space and that space for interpretation and that soft place to land. So all of the YWCA projects provide these reservoirs of hope through art. We believe the arts are part of a journey. They're not separate from a journey. We built this project for the entire time that COVID has been with us. And that has had its own challenges. We were able to continue with our project because it was considered essential because the project is for homeless families. Everybody who participated by donating, by helping us adopt a room and complete each apartment with everything a homeless family will need to begin their home. Every single person who in any way touched this project owns it with us. It's not just a YWCA project. This is a project created because the community cares. I wanted people to be able just to outfit one bathroom and know they're part of this project. So I wanted to expand the community that felt like they were part of this project by offering another way for them to come in and help our families. So now that we are open and tenants are moving in, I am really understanding what homelessness looks like because I'm getting to know the tenants. And it has been amazing. I leave here every time I've talked to a tenant just dancing in my heart because I'm hearing the stories and the difference a home makes. Oh my God, every boulder that got in our way, every little issue that came up, it's all melting away. It doesn't matter. What matters is people have a home. I want other organizations, be them nonprofit or not, to know that they can do a project like this. This was a $23.2 million project, which sounds really daunting, but if you have the passion and you have the belief that what you're doing is needed in your community, you can make it happen. As long as you stay focused on why you're doing something and it's the right thing to do, you'll get there. So I just want to really be a voice for people who need housing like this. Let's work together to make this world and our community a better place for everyone.
It takes a dream team to do a project like this. And in that regard, I would like to thank YWCA Deputy Director Karen White, SMR Architects, Corsmo Construction, and Beacon Development Group. At the end of the film, I shared a mission statement we created when we first met, and that we turned to the following 2 years. It states, together we are creating home at last, built on safety, respect, honesty, and care for each other and for those that will be finding refuge here. It feels almost surreal that we are parting ways now, but it is only a physical parting because I will hold all of you in my heart forever. I also want to thank the following Rotarians who sponsored the cost of the video created by Devoted to Video: Gil Quante, Mike Dunbar, John West, Jim Whitaker, Pat Still, and Diane Kelleher. Thank you so much for making that video possible. It is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Rachel Louise Snyder. Praised by Masha Jessen for the New Yorker as a writer of uncommon talent and confidence, Rachel Louise Synder is the author of No Visible Bruises: What We Don't Know About Domestic Violence Can Kill Us. An intimate investigation of the true scope of domestic violence, this deeply reported book reveals how the roots of America's most pressing social crises, from mass shootings to mass incarcerations to the hashtag #MeToo, are buried in abuse that happens behind closed doors. Through the stories of victims, perpetrators, law enforcement, and reform movements from across the country, Snyder explores the real roots of private violence, its far-reaching consequences for society, and what it will take to truly address it. The New York Times called No Visible Bruises extraordinary, and the Washington Post asserted of the book, it will save lives. The book was awarded the Hillman Prize and the New York Public Library Helen Bernstein Book Award, was a finalist for the Kirkus Prize, the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, and the National Book Critics Circle Award. It was also one of Publisher Weekly's top nonfiction books of 2019 and one New York Times top 10 books and one of the New York Times top 10 books of 2019. Previously, Snyder reported for public radio programs, including This American Life, Marketplace, and All Things Considered. She teaches creative writing and journalism at American University. Please welcome Rachel Louise Synder.
Hello. Okay, I think I'm here. I've had a little bit of Wi-Fi difficulty, which is the way of things these days, but I want to just say that building is stunning. I've seen a lot of shelters, and I hope next time I get out to Seattle, I can tour it. And it's really incredible that you've been able to do this under these circumstances, circumstances that I think many of us have never seen in our lifetimes. It's incredibly grim, and I feel like what we all do and what we're all doing here matters really more than ever. You know, I came to domestic violence really through a side door. I have a graduate degree in fiction, concerning to my parents, I have to say, but I made it work. And ironically, fiction was the thing that would someday help me understand domestic violence, which I'm going to talk about just very briefly. But before I do, I just want to share the story of how I came to it. In 2009, I had just moved back to the States after, as Miriam said, I did work all over the world, traveled to more than 55 countries or so. And, you know, I did what I considered women's rights or human rights stories, women forcibly sterilized by the Chinese government when they were in Tibet, or Afghan women jailed in Kabul for love crimes, women gang raped in Cambodia for weekend sport. And in all of these stories, domestic violence really sat as a place of origin for the violence that would later be perpetrated in the lives of these girls and women. And I really, I had a very casual understanding of that. I just expected there to be domestic violence. And as a result of that, I just didn't even really ask about it. It was like this assumption, right? That domestic violence was something that we couldn't do anything about, that I, as a journalist and a writer, couldn't do anything about. So on this day, I had, as I say, just moved back to America, and I was standing on the driveway of a friend of mine, and his sister drove up, and I'd never met his sister. He introduced us. And, you know, I did that American thing. What do you do? She said, oh, I work at a local domestic violence agency. And I right away thought, oh, you know, shelter, right? That was my sole association with domestic violence and what an agency might do. And I said, oh, that's cool. What do you do at the agency? And she said, well, I work on this project where we use science, we use the research to try to eradicate domestic violence homicide by predicting it before it happens. Predicting domestic violence homicide. My jaw dropped. I mean, I still remember this moment in my life. Like, it's like, you know, the day my daughter was born, the day I got married, the day I learned that you could predict domestic violence homicide in order to prevent it, right? I mean, it's just such an incredible moment for me. And so I was like, what? You do what? You what? And as she talked, it became very clear to me within minutes that I had bought into a set of myths around domestic violence that A, I didn't even know were myths, and B, meant that as someone who believed these myths, I was also perpetrating those myths, right? And I'm talking about things here that many of you are familiar with, things like, you know, if a situation was bad enough, a victim would just leave, or that if a victim was in a bad situation, it's because they had bad luck in life or had made bad choices. You I believed that the impetus for change was on them. We had shelters. That was the answer. That was the sole answer that existed in my mind. I believed that restraining orders worked. I believed that violent people were just violent and there was nothing we could do about it. We couldn't prevent violence from happening. All of these things, she one by one just knocked down. And I realized just how ignorant I had been, but also in a way how my stories, all the stories I told, 20 years worth of stories, really only told half of what mattered, half the story. So let me get back to fiction for one quick minute. When you study fiction, what you learn first is about plot. Maybe not first, but early on, you learn about plot. And a lot of, I teach, as Miriam said, I teach at a university now, so I get a lot of incoming young people, 18, 19 years old, sort of, experimenting with fiction for the first time, and they mistake plot for an event. So I get a lot of stories, they're kind of adorable. They're things like, there'll be a carjacking, followed by a holdup somewhere, followed by a murder. And then I would say 50% of all my stories involve a woman who is killed in some manner. One story that I will never forget was a man who found pieces of his wife in the desert. So these are the kinds of stories I'm getting, right? The students are mistaking plot for event. What you learn about plot is that, in fact, it's not just a series of unrelated events. It is a cause and effect relationship in which those events, those causal events, escalate until they reach a climax. I'm going to illustrate this with a story from No Visible Bruises, from my book. It's about a young woman named Michelle Monson-Mosier, who's 14 when she meets the man who's eventually going to become her husband. His name is Rocky. He's 10 years older. He's one of those guys that kind of presented very young, right? He was kind of a small guy and wiry and full of energy, and so it was not at all apparent that he was 24 years old, but he was. And she fell madly in love with him immediately. Her parents were divorced, and but they, had a very good relationship, and they lived about 2 miles from each other in Billings, Montana. And by the age of 15, she's pregnant. This is when her family finds out how old he is. Up until then, they don't know. And her mother considers filing statutory rape charges against Rocky, but then Michelle does what many teenagers would do, which is to say, if you do that, I'm going to take off with the baby and with Rocky, and you'll never see any of us again. Now, I'm sure a lot of you out there are parents. I'm a parent myself. I think we all would have done what Sally did in that situation, which was to say, it's better for me to have my teenage daughter and the baby here than to have her out in the world somewhere. So she doesn't file statutory rape charges. She gives birth to a little girl named Christy. She's born prematurely and she has some lung issues. So she stays in the NICU for about 6 weeks, but she's generally okay. And when Michelle takes Christy out of the hospital, she moves in with Rocky against her mother's wishes, but she says to her mother, we deserve to try. We deserve this chance. And so she moves into a small trailer with Rocky. And by 17, she's pregnant again. She gives birth at 17 to a little boy named Kyle. Now, she still graduates high school on time. And this is one of the most amazing things when I think about Michelle. Like, what would she have contributed to the world? Someone who has 2 kids under the age of 3 and still graduates high school on time. Incredible. So she's living in this trailer and her father says, look, that trailer is too small for the 4 of you. I'm going to build a house on the outskirts of Billings, and then you can rent my house in town. I'll give you a good deal. And that's what they do. Rocky, meanwhile, had been working on a seismic crew, which took him out of town for weeks at a time. He didn't like to be gone from his family. So he quit that job, and he never had regular work again. He had seasonal work, construction work, roofing, that kind of thing, but not regular full-time work. So money is a problem. So Michelle offers to get a job. They live near a Motel 6, like walking distance from a Motel 6. She says, I'll just get a job cleaning. or something. And if the kids need me, I'll be walking distance from them. It'll be, it'll be easier for us. Rocky flips out. To him, this is her saying, you're not being the man of the family. That's how he understands her offer to get work. And he loses it. He starts screaming at them. He goes and gets her grandfather's hunting rifle, lines them up on the couch, and says, if you ever threaten to get a job again, I will kill you. I will kill these kids. I will kill all of you. It is my responsibility, etc., etc. We all have the kind of narrative in our minds of what he would have said in that moment. Michelle's never seen him like this. This is really terrifying. She's about 18 years old. And when he calms down, she calls his parents. And they're like, that is crazy. That's ridiculous. They come over. His father gets the gun, collects whatever ammunition he could find, and says, son, you can't be doing this. And Rocky's like, I know, I shouldn't have. I just freaked out. There's a lot of pressure, et cetera, et cetera. So they leave. And when they leave, everything is calmed down. But here's the part of the situation that Michelle doesn't know to read. It appears that things are calmed down, but what is the message that she's left with? She's left with, he controls her life. He controls what she does and what she doesn't do, right? At the end of the day, the fight may have worn down, but she still is in the same position she was in 4 or 5 hours earlier, except that now she's got this vision of what he's capable of. She's got this threat in her mind, right? Think about plot. Because somebody does X, someone else reacts and does Y. And because that person does Y, the person who did X does Z. So time goes by, about a year or so, and Michelle says to Rocky, look, why don't I go take some classes in nursing at the university? They live near Montana State University. And she says this time she's smart enough to play into his control and his manipulation. She says, this way we won't have to bring Christy to the ER as often for her lungs. Remember, she was born as a preemie, so she had ongoing lung issues. She said, and I can take care of things at home. So she's, first of all, using it as a financial incentive for him. But second of all, what she's saying is, I'm going to give you even more control over me. She's so smart. Her plan is to get a nursing degree, but he doesn't know that, right? So he says, okay, yes. And she goes to school and she fills out forms for financial aid. And the financial aid people say, well, you're only 19. We need your tax returns. And she's never had a regular job, so she has no tax returns. And they said, well, we're going to need your parents then because you're only 19. She's like, that's crazy. I have 2 kids. I haven't lived with my parents in 4 years. And they said, well, then we need your husbands. And she said, I'm not married. My boyfriend and I just live together. And they said, well, then get married and bring us his tax returns. You see, our bureaucracy has patriarchy to it too. Just imagine the tables being turned and saying to a 19-year-old young man, go and marry your girlfriend so that you can bring us her tax returns. Even today, right? That wouldn't happen. So she does. She marries Rocky. She actively is trying to leave him. And she has to, because of these systems, further embed her life into his. Rocky follows her to class purposely. He wants her to know that he's there, that he's watching her, that she is being allowed this by his largesse. During this time, Michelle sees less and less of her family. They only live a mile away. But Rocky says to her what so many abusers have said to victims throughout the years, I know your family doesn't like me, so it makes me uncomfortable to be around them. And thereby he's able to isolate her more and more. Things start to get really bad at some point. And Michelle tells her older sister, Alyssa, that she thinks Rocky is having an affair. And then she asks her mother, Sally, to take her to the doctor to be tested for an STD. Now, nobody in Michelle's family thinks that Rocky was having an affair at any point. But Michelle's a little bit hypochondriac, a little bit of a hypochondriac. And so her mother takes her to like a minute clinic. And while she's there, she, of course, does not have an STD, but the doctor who saw her, whoever it was concerned enough about her mental state that he gave her a prescription for antidepressants. This is, to me, such an incredible moment in her story, because whatever she said in that doctor's office was concerning enough for a doctor who'd never seen her before to give her antidepressants, but not so concerning that he or she, it may have been a woman doctor, I don't know, didn't ever issue a tear-us-off warning, right? A tear-us-off warning is when someone is potentially going to harm themselves or harm others. It's like a blank in her story. And I'm going to get back to that in a minute. Rocky, meanwhile, finds the antidepressant medication at some later point and throws it away because he's not going to have a crazy wife on his hands. Several months after this, Michelle shows up at her mother's house and she drops both kids off and she says she's going to go home to confront Rocky about this affair. And she says to her mother, do not let him have these kids. Now, what her mother doesn't understand, and what all of us who work in the domestic violence field probably do understand, is the subtext behind what Michelle was saying. Don't let him have those kids. The subtext is, he has used these children for leverage against me. I know this ploy. Don't let him have them. I think her mother would have done something very differently had she been able to understand that there was a subtext behind what Michelle was saying. So about an hour goes by, and Sally, Michelle's mother, is there with the two kids and with her other daughter, Melanie, who is about 6 months pregnant at this point, Michelle's younger sister. And they both see Rocky pull up. And he gets out of his car and he has just a crazed look on his face, and he storms across their yard. Sally goes and locks the front door and the back door, and she throws the two kids on the couch and just throws her body over them. Like she doesn't know what else she can do, right? You can imagine this split-second reaction. This takes seconds. And they hear him breaking in. They hear him break the glass at the back door. He does. He unlocks the door. He gets blood all down the wall. He's cut himself all up. He comes in. He takes Sally by the neck, throws her off the kids, puts Kirsty over his shoulder. She's 7 years old. Melanie, the 6-month pregnant sister, tries to stop him, and he assaults her and leaves her bruised all the way from her shoulder to her wrist. And then he's gone with Kirsty. No one knows where. This happens in minutes, seconds. Michelle comes over to her mother's house and for the first time ever confesses to her mother that Rocky had beat her for years in front of the kids, not in front of the kids, that he'd threatened to kill her, threatened to kill the kids. She tells her about incident after incident. And oh, by the way, she says, he recently got up to the Rims, which is a natural area, rock cropping on the outskirts of Billings, and got a snake, a rattlesnake. And he keeps it in a cage in our house. And he says he's going to put it in bed with me if I do anything to piss him off, or in the shower with me. Sally says, we got to call the police. And Michelle agrees to this. And the police come and they say, what do you want us to charge him with? It's his kid. He gets charged with criminal mischief. I want you to think about the systems that Michelle is interacting with here. The education system, the healthcare system, now law enforcement, right? This is how victims do it. It isn't this 10 calls to the police. I mean, that happens sometimes, but I think it's much more often that someone has one single incident, one single interaction with each system. And once a system fails them, they move on to another one to try to get help. The next morning, Michelle and her mother go and they file a restraining order at the DA's office. And she writes her affidavit. She writes about the snake. She writes about the beatings. Rocky, meanwhile, had spent the night in a motel with Kirsty. And when he came back in the morning, there was a restraining order out and he gets arrested. He gets arrested right in front of Kirsty, which angers him, right? While Michelle and her mother are driving away from the DA's office, She gets a call from her mother-in-law, Rocky's mother, who says, "Oh, sweetheart, Rocky just called us. He told us everything that happened. He was so upset. He was really upset to have gotten arrested in front of Christy, but he also knows he went too far this time, and he swears he's going to get help, go to counseling. He says he's going to stay at his brother's until you two can work it out. So we've bailed him out." The minute Michelle hears those words, "We've bailed him out," she freaks out. Her mother said her entire demeanor changed. She turned the car around and just sped back to the DA's office, where she recanted everything. None of it ever happened. She lied about the snake. She doesn't want to press charges. The DA should just leave them alone, right? 2 months go by in which no one sees Michelle, Rocky, or their kids. No one from his family, no one from her family. And then on one Friday night, the Friday before Thanksgiving, she shows up at her father's house with the 2 kids and says, "I'm really done this time. Can we stay here?" Of course, he lets them. In the morning, she says to her father, "I'm going to go make a plan with Alyssa," that's her older sister, "keep the kids here." Rocky, of course, is stalking her, so he's there. He watches her leave, and he manipulates his way into the house, promises Michelle's dad that he'll take care of the kids. He just wants to take them to a movie. Of course, he doesn't bring them back. This time, though, Michelle doesn't go chase him. Sunday comes, and he shows up at the house again, and he says, "Christy is vomiting blood, and Michelle has to come." Now, Michelle is not stupid. She knows this is a lie. But she goes because she's a mother, right? And what mother wouldn't? And she's there for a few hours, and she comes back and she tells her dad, "This is what's going to happen. I'm going to stay here tonight. Rocky's at the house with the kids. He's going to bring them to school in the morning, and then he's going to pack up a couple of suitcases and go to his brother's house. I will pick the kids up from school, and we're going to just temporarily have a trial separation and go to counseling." That's the plan. But it doesn't quite work out that way. Monday morning, Rocky brings the kids to school. And then instead of going home to pack up suitcases, he goes and buys a gun, secondhand from the Thrifty Nickel. Michelle picks up the kids from school, feeds them dinner. At one point, a neighbor sees Rocky staring in the windows, going from window to window, looking in at his house. And then sometime that evening, he kills Michelle, 4 bullets. And then he kills Christy, and then he kills Kyle, and then he kills himself. This story, like all serious domestic violence stories, follows a predictable plot in cause and effect and in escalation. You think about the moment with Michelle's grandfather's hunting rifle, and then think about that snake, and you begin to see the escalation. Michelle understands. She gets his messages. She may not know it or be able to articulate it, but she does understand, right? The first outsiders she calls are his family. And they leave, but she gets the message that he is more powerful, right, than that particular familial system. Then she goes to the education system, who forces her to embed herself further with a man that she's trying to leave. His message, of course, is that he's watching. He's always there. Next comes the medical system, which I've already talked a little bit about. Concerned enough for one thing, but not concerned enough for another. Then he breaks into his mother-in-law's house. He gets charged with criminal mischief, which is essentially a fine. He could have also been charged with burglary, unlawful entry, remaining unlawfully within the house. He could have certainly been charged with criminal endangerment for the rattlesnake, which is a felony in Montana. Here's another system weakness. At some point, incidentally, she went and talked to her father and asked him to put the house in her name because she had planned to get a nursing degree and buy the house from him so that she could afford to raise her kids on her own. They did a land contract. Rocky never knew about it. This is one of the most important moments in my book. And one of the most important myths that I needed to dismantle for myself, and that I dismantle in the book, which is that leaving is not a suitcase packed up on the stoop, ready to go. Leaving is what Michelle's story looks like. It is making plans. It is tiptoeing into systems to see what will work and what will not work. People say that it takes 7 or 8 times to leave. I'm not sure that I believe that. What I believe is that it takes one time to leave, but that one time is years in the making. Maybe at the end of the day, the distinction is not important. She tries 2 more systems: law enforcement when she calls the police, and the judiciary when she files a restraining order against her. That DA could have done evidence-based prosecution without Michelle's testimony. She could have interviewed Michelle's mother and Michelle's sister. She could have interviewed neighbors, right? There's many other things she could have done. She could have sent police out to look for that rattlesnake in the cage. So, but she does none of that. She says, I've lost my witness. I'm going to drop the case. So all of these systems prioritize his freedom over her safety. And Michelle understands this. How do we know she understands it? Because she recants everything. Recanting is a negotiation, a final negotiation often, for one's very life. The most effective systems that I've seen in the jurisdictions that I have spoken with or researched in the 10 years that I've been looking into domestic violence are ones that have knocked down the bureaucratic barriers and the communication barriers between them. The ones where the police are actively working with the domestic violence advocates, and where the DAs are actively working with the domestic violence advocates and with the police. Those are the systems that have really begun to make a change, like that system outside of Boston with my friend that day on her driveway. The thing that I think I understand now that I didn't understand then is that domestic violence is perhaps the single most important view with which to look at the vast social issues that we face as a country. As that view, as a frame, it has incredible public consequences. We saw just 2 days ago, I think it was 2 days ago, in the mass shooting, right? We see this all the time. It intersects nearly every issue we face as a country, from mass incarceration to homelessness. In fact, it is the leading cause of homelessness for women in this country. From education to mental illness, to mental health, to gender inequality, and of course those mass shootings, it intersects nearly every social issue we face. And it costs us billions of dollars a year in lost wages, in incarceration, in court fees, in healthcare, in law enforcement. You may think it doesn't affect your life directly, but in fact, it affects all of us. Before COVID, 137 women were killed around the world every day, and those are only the ones that are reported. We don't know yet the 2020 homicide numbers officially. Those won't come until the fall, probably. But we know that homicide is up in every major and minor city in this country. Minneapolis, for example, 2019 had 47 homicides, 2020, 81, nearly double. In New Orleans, those numbers are 120 versus 194. Omaha, Nebraska had twice as many. Phoenix, Arizona, 110 versus 175. So when I talk about domestic violence, what I say is that domestic violence is the story of murder in this country. And it is the story of homelessness and gender inequality and mass shootings and mass incarceration and trafficking and sexual assault and foster kids and traumatic brain injury and teen dating violence. It is every story we are facing in a broken world. I want to leave you with one thought. As a writer and a journalist, the foundation of my professional world is simple. What are the systems I'm looking at, and who benefits and who loses from those systems? That's what I do. That's all I do. All my questions come from that. What are those systems? We need systemic change, but we also need to recognize what systems we are part of. those systems that exist in our communities. People ask me all the time what they can do. And what I say is figure out what systems you are part of, right? There's your professional systems. Does your HR department have any training on domestic violence? Do you go to church? Does your clergy have any training on domestic violence? Are you part of a book group? Have you had a conversation with the people in your book group about domestic violence? Figure out what systems you are part of. That even includes your family systems, right? Educational systems, legislative systems. Because what I learned that day on the driveway talking to my friend Suzanne is that my system, the media, was failing utterly to understand and illuminate domestic violence. It was a national failure. If someone like me, who had all the privilege, right? White, middle class, traveled, educated, if I could misunderstand this, then the system I was in was deeply, deeply wrong. And my book, I think, is really an attempt to address the failure of that system, because we need to know what victims like Michelle can't say, what they may not know they know. It is up to us to understand this context. I leave you with my favorite Gandhi quote. He said this: "In a gentle way, you can shake the world." Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today, Rachel. I've read your book and I recommend it highly. I'm very familiar with the question, why doesn't she just leave? And I have several answers, one of which they do, or we wouldn't be in business, or any of the other domestic violence agencies across the country.
Mm-hmm.
But until I read your book, I never understood why victims recant. And you shared that story today. That was a real eye-opener for me. Now I understand that. Your remarks highlight why we work to change systems, as we also work to serve survivors. And it is why we are so grateful for the support of the community, because it will take all of us to see systemic change happen. So thank you so much for your remarks. And there is a link in the chat that Jesse added if you're interested in purchasing Rachel's book today. It's a book that I agree will save lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now for the much anticipated Rags reveal. For those of you who are new to the YWCA's Luncheon, this is the event where the wonderful women of Rags share how much they made at the Wearable Art Show and Sale that takes place every March. This year, of course, it was held in a virtual space. Mandy Webster Martin is the chair of the event this year, and I welcome her via video to share how the show did.
Founded in 1994, RAGS has been a longtime supporter of YWCA Pierce County. Over the past 27 years, we've raised more than $2 million, showcased over 650 different artists, awarded more than $27,000 in prize money to top artists, and served more than 26,000 visitors. This year was the first time we hosted our event online, and you, the artists, shoppers, and donors, made the event a success. Nearly 50 artists participated in this year's sale and gallery show, contributing thousands of pieces of inventory and resulting in hundreds of sales. Remember, our work doesn't just support the YWCA. Every artist that participated in our event is a small business owner whose livelihood has been impacted by the pandemic. This event also wouldn't be possible without the amazing contributions of the RAGS Guild. We'll soon start planning our 2022 event and are always looking for new Guild members. So if you'd like to be a part of this fantastic group of volunteers, please let us know. Okay, time for the big reveal. Because of your generosity and support, we were able to donate $71,000 to the YWCA this year. This money is considered unrestricted funds, meaning the Y can use it wherever it's needed most. Thank you all so much for all the support you've shown RAGS over the years. We hope to see you all in person at next year's event, happening March 10th through 13th at Larson's Mercedes-Benz of Tacoma in Fife.
To all the RAGS Guild members and everyone who shopped and donated to the event this year, thank you for pivoting and keeping the show alive in these historical times. Did you hear that amount over the years? Over 2 million. It's remarkable. Thank you so much. Next, please join me in hearing the story of one of our former clients. If you attended our GLAM event this last February, you met Natasha Williams. We are sharing her story again for the power and inspiration she shares with us about her journey.
Before I found the YWCA, my life was full of fear. I didn't know that there was help out there for women who have suffered abuse, domestic violence. I didn't know there was those resources. So my life was full of fear. I would wake up, take care of my kids. I was married at the time in active addiction, and I internalized a lot of pain and things that I was going through. I didn't have anyone to talk to, so I used drugs and alcohol. I was referred to the Y from Family Justice Center, and was told that it was a shelter I could go to. And when I heard the word shelter, that fear set in, like, I'm not going to a shelter. I want to bring my daughter to a shelter. And so I felt hopeless.
Natasha started services with us in 2011. I didn't meet Natasha until probably 2019 or 2020, not that long ago. We talked for probably 2 hours. And it took me about an hour to relax and to realize, oh, she's just here to share her story with me because she's feeling empowered and wants me to know. She's not here because anything went wrong. She's here because everything went right. And it just was the most meaningful experience for me to hear her tell me her story of how she was treated by our staff.
And so, she shared a little bit of her story, I shared mine, and that gave me fire to keep fighting. I wasn't through the process, done with the court process of getting my daughter at the time. I was just, filling out the why, and I was grateful for that. So, again, the counselor or the lady who held the DV group was so patient with me. I would come high and angry and hurting, and she would just, allow me to sit there and didn't make me leave. And I was able to listen to other women's stories. I wasn't ready to utilize everything that the Y had to offer, but what they gave me was unconditional love and acceptance, and I ended up coming back. And when I came in, it wasn't the shelter I was thinking in my head. It was beautiful. It was like a home away from home. My daughter had a bunk bed. We had our own room. The people were non-judgmental. I was in active addiction at the time, and I thought I was hiding it, but they knew and didn't use that against me. Losing custody of my daughter is what made me wake up and decide I need to do something different. It didn't happen overnight. It was a journey. The day that they said that I could have more time with my daughter, I call that the day that I got my mommy license back. The attorney for the Y came to watch. That made me feel important and of value. And I met her at that time, and she told me I did a great job, and we made an appointment.
So the first time I met Natasha was following her hearing for adequate cause. What I watched was this powerful woman really having a desire to do what she thought was best for her and her daughter. And her response was, "Oh my God, I feel like a mom for the first time."
The attorney didn't promise me that I was going to get what I wanted, but she promised me that she would fight for me, and that she believed in me. And the whole time I'm like, yeah, right, still that doubt. But she did what she said, and
trial came and I showed up and my voice was heard and my daughter's voice was heard, and that's huge because your whole life, or my life, being a survivor of all this abuse, it's like no one cares and nobody wants to hear it, right? And I really wanted my truth to come out, and that's what I got at trial. The fact that they were there for me time and time again, now that I can be there for my daughter, it's like a domino effect. It's just totally amazing, and I'm so grateful for the people that have given to the Y, and just hope and pray that they continue. What the Y gave me is priceless. It's priceless. I know that I'm valuable today. I know that my daughter needs me today. I know that my past is my past, but it's empowering, and it can help so many other women who feel like they don't have hope and nobody cares, and that's not true. And up until coming to the Y, that's what I believe.
What's so important to me is that donors realize that they get the credit for clients like Natasha's success. Because without the funds, we couldn't do the work we do.
Natasha is an inspiration to me, and I hope she is to you too. If you would like to leave a comment in the chat for Natasha, we will be sure and share it with her. She is at work and unable to attend the event today. And now it is my honor to introduce Associate Board members, Lisa and Allah. They will share why they care about our work and give you an opportunity to support us as well.
Hi, thank you, Miriam. And hello, my name is Lisa Borkowski,
and my name is Ala Al-Shaybani.
We are on the YWCA Pierce County Associate Board. We are a board of donors under 35, focused on engaging younger supporters in the mission of the YWCA. I have been on the associate board for almost 5 years, which seems like so much time and yet so little time at the same time. When I first joined the board, donating to the Y seemed like a no-brainer to me. I have been fortunate never to have experienced domestic abuse, and I want that safety and privilege that I experienced to be everyone's experience. But I never understood the ways so many systems fail survivors, the way that Rachel talked about it, until I was engaged with the board. To have gained such a deeper understanding of how important our donations are through stories I've heard from clients about how the Y gave them hope at the darkest points in their lives, and recently by seeing how quickly the new housing project filled up. It's amazing, and we need so much more of it.
Yeah, I've been on the associate board for 3 years now. I used to volunteer at the Y when I was in high school, and I always saw how important their work was to Pierce County. And then since that time, I've actually had friends who've used the Y services. And then about 3 years ago, someone who has since left the board asked if I'd be interested in joining, and I jumped on the chance to be a part of it. Being able to contribute to philanthropy in a way that is accessible, especially as a grad student, and to be able to make a positive impact is why I give.
So the Associate Board was founded in 2015, and at the same time, we founded what we call the 253 Club, which is a donor circle and community. Throughout the years, every year, 253 Club members get access to events that the Associate Board puts on, which include product drive happy hours at bars and restaurants, bowling nights, karaoke, dance parties. We have an annual catered club member celebration, which is super fun. And since 2015, 253 Club members have donated over $125,000 to the YWCA. which is amazing.
Yeah. One of the great things about the 253 Club, as Lisa mentioned, is the opportunity to build community with other club members and connect to the mission of the YWCA. In the past, we've organized events to tour the YWCA programming spaces, get access to client art shows, and volunteer at the Y. Every year, we host several product drives which bring in hundreds of items. We approach these drives with intentionality. For example, we have a tampon drive in order to bring in different menstrual products for our clients. Additionally, we host an inclusive hair care drive because we recognize that hair is diverse and as a result requires different products. We also run a toy drive for the children and allow them to shop around for gifts for their siblings. All of these drives raise awareness, but they also support the dignity of our clients.
As you can see, we are extremely proud of the work that we do through the Associate Board and the community that we've built, the community of givers we've built through the 253 Club. You've heard from Rachel today how critical domestic violence advocates are to the lives of survivors, and heard Natasha's story. In order to keep supporting this work, will you join Allah and me in supporting the YWCA with a donation today? You can join the 253 Club with a minimum annual donation of $253, which is why it's called the 253 Club, and our awesome area code. That's a little bit over $20 a month. Members often give more. In any donation to the Y, you can really multiply your impact by giving monthly, which allows the YWCA more predictability in planning throughout the year. We love and value all gifts at any level. If you can, please consider beginning a monthly donation today or increasing what you were planning to give just a little bit.
Links to donate are being put into the chat box now. You can join the 253 Club through the 253 Club package on the auction page. We'd love to have you. We're so excited to get back to in-person events later this year or next year whenever it's safe. And we've got some really fun things planned, so join us. Follow the 253 Club and the YWCA on Facebook and Instagram in order to get updated on our latest events. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Allah. We appreciate you so deeply and gratefully. And I also appreciate all the associate board members and the 253 Club, which I call the coolest club in town. So thank you so much for sharing your passion with us today. We are very, very grateful. So it is now time in the program to say goodbye. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today and for all you do to support our work. Please remember that the auction closes at 6 p.m. tonight, and that is when we will draw for the winner of the trip to Palm Desert, a week at a beautiful resort with all sorts of other amenities. And who doesn't want this? And I want to thank Cindy Grady for making this amazing donation. I want to let you know that we are only selling 250 tickets and we have only 80 left. So if you want to win, buy your raffle ticket now. Tickets are just $25 a piece, and 6 people who do not win the trip will win this beautiful shoulder bag. That's a YWCA shoulder bag that's modeled by Director of Therapeutic Services, Jen Schott. We will notify all winners tonight and post them on our Facebook page, which is the YWCA Pierce County. If you haven't liked us, like our page. Thank you again. Thank you so much for being here, for making my final event at the YWCA feel so incredibly successful and wonderful. And have a great rest of your day. Bye.